please. Thank you. Yeah, basically, this is the stuff I actually know. So the GC stuff, I'm an enthusiast like you guys. Seriously, I'm an enthusiast. I've learned it. I'm excited about it. The first presentation I did, sort of from the heart, and reading all the stuff that's going on the planet, and how might we have affected or not personally. Again, that's a personal exploration area. This is what my educational background in 25 years of beating my head against hard things has taught me. Okay, and so what this is an outline, basically, of, I guess you could call it MBA in a box. So I'm not going to have, there's no prescription here. It's similar. Gary? Thank you, Gary. Similar to what Gary's saying. It totally depends on what your situation is, where you are, what you want to do, and only you know that. And my guess is you don't know that yet either, because I generally don't know on any given day. Okay? So it's an outline. What I wanted to help all you guys understand, because I've chewed on this for 25 years in different sorts of operations, is what are all the pieces of a business? How might we be able to think about them and maximize their benefit to us, whatever that might be, financial, social, environmental, spiritual, and what the risks might be, and how we might be able to minimize those, unless you like living on the edge. There's a guy, Ron Cassio, I don't know if any of you spoke to Ron, he goes by RC on the lit forums. Ron has a great quote he uses time to time that says, if you're not living on the edge, you're taking up too much space. I am risk averse in business. Because if you haven't done your homework, and so you haven't gone through the proper permitting steps up front, it can be very expensive. If you haven't done the planning to understand your costs, and you're not making money, business losses on a monthly basis does not make a sustainable business. No matter how green you are, it's not financially sustainable. So we're going to step through an outline for thinking about businesses, or Business Planning 101. So this is just an outline slide. These are the topics we're going to cover. Why biodiesel? Of all the things you could go do with your money, or your friend's money, or grandma's money, or investor's money, why biodiesel? We're going to talk about the marketing. One of the things I remember learning at business school up in Greeley too many years ago was marketing driven as opposed to production driven. We've all heard build a better mousetrap and there'll be a path to your door. Maybe. There's lots of mousetraps out there already. We're going to talk about finance. We're going to talk a bit about regulations, both environmental, permitting, business, NBB memberships, EPA. Do I really need to join that stuff? We're going to talk a little bit about technology choices. Is it shockwave? Is it continuous flow? Is it, what is it? Is it dry washing? Is it, we're going to talk about side stream management. I'm picking the word side stream these days because it's better than waste stream and it's not quite co-product. Talk about that. I'll talk about some facility considerations. Can I do it in my house? I live on the 3rd floor. Can I do 500,000 gallons a year? Probably not. Okay. We're going to talk a little bit about quality assurance. You guys have heard some good stuff from Braden and Steve on that, I think, and from Rachel. But we'll just touch on that a little bit. Strategic planning probably should be up front on this diagram, but I stuck it at the end because then we're going to talk about a case analysis briefly, which was the case analysis of biodiesel. Been there, done there, got the shirt. It's no longer in business, and we'll talk about why. And there you have it. So, how much time do we have roughly? An hour and.
Maybe 2 days.
Okay, 2 days. There's just a lot of topics.
Depends on how hungry people are, because the next thing is lunch.
Frankly, I'd always rather talk than eat, although that doesn't seem apparent. But if you guys have watched me today, I've done a lot more talking than eating, and yet it remains. So I want to try to keep moving. So questions will be good, but everybody's situation is different. And so getting through this outline and kind of at least go, God, I hadn't even thought of that one. I didn't thought of that one. Damn it, Bob, why did you? I'm losing sleep now. Okay? So, why biodiesel? What is it you're going to go do? I've talked to people who say, and I bet you know these people, or you are wondering, wow, I just found biodiesel. It's the coolest stuff ever. I'm going to do it. I'm going to bathe in it. Frankie, you're one. Right? I'm not going to drink it because there's biocides in it, but I just want to be involved. Just because it's going to help save the planet. It's going to save the planet for my kids. So what are you thinking? Well, you know, we're going to make a biodiesel plant. We're going to produce fuel. Hell, you know, I think brain surgery is cool. I'm not going to go do that. Okay? I don't have the educational background to do that, and I will kill people. So, you know, it's well-intentioned to want to jump into an industry, but man, either have deep pockets, high risk tolerance, or just be insane if you just jump in and say, I'm going to go make a biodiesel plant, or any other business ventures. Okay? Because there's people doing it already. You know, maybe what you really need to do is say, I really want to do it because I want to drive my car on it. You don't need to make a plant, Rachel, to drive your vehicles on biodiesel. You guys started. Darn! Right, so you know, they started there and moved forward. But if you start at the, we're going to be a producer, you know, cuidado, be careful is all I can say. So why are you getting into it? You know, is it environmental? Is it financial? Is it karmic? Is it because there's no biodiesel available? I've talked to someone in Vancouver, Washington, right across from Portland. And this person said, I just want to get into it. It's just such a good thing. It's just really great. And I said, you're familiar with sequential? And they said, who? I'm not kidding. Who? So sequential is making fuel up there. They're making it for waste vegetable oil. They've got the coolest green station that I've seen pictures of. I haven't been to yet. They're backed by Pacific Biodiesel, one of my former employers, who makes plants that can make good fuel, can make bad fuel too. Okay? But this person said, I didn't even know they were here. Well, man, before you get into building a plant in Vancouver, understand there's a plant in Salem that's distributed by Sequential all through the Pacific Northwest. Don't reinvent wheels, because, man, you know, unless you just got money to burn, and if so, give it to Kiva, okay? So one of the questions that you call is if you chose not to enter the biodiesel business, what else might you do with your resources? Create world peace. Open a micro business of some other nature. Spend time with your kids. Okay? There's lots of things to do. So your resources are financial and their time. Okay? There's all kinds of great things to do with those sorts of resources, and putting them into the money pit or the gold mine might, you know, there might be other things to do with it. This is called opportunity cost in those big business words. If you can point to someone who's successfully doing what you intend to do, okay, that's a good thing. So, I want to play in the NBA. I want to play in the NBA. How many overweight, middle-aged white guys are in the NBA? Okay, John Stockton might be overweight and middle-aged by now, but he, you know, literally, and altitudinally challenged guys like me, you know, I'm thinking not. Okay, so I can't point to somebody like me who's doing it. But if I ask him, why do I want to be in the NBA? And I really don't. But if I did, it might be because I love the crowd. I love, you know, it's a fast-paced game, right? Well, heck, I could be a business manager, okay? I could be a water boy. I could be the sweat towel boy, okay? And get all those things out of it without getting elbows, you know, out on the court, right? Which I would never get to anyway. So try to find somebody who's doing what you want to do, and then if you do what they do, you might have success. And that's one of the reasons that we look at people like Piedmont, you know, cocoa oil, Yoderville, which is more different, I'm sorry, Steve, but people who are actually doing stuff and going, they're doing it. These guys from Austin are doing it. You know, their tank, how cool was that? The sucker tank thing? You know, and so find somebody who's doing what you want to do. How much risk do you want to take? How much money is it? How about professional risk? Okay? So I went and joined a firm called Biodiesel Industries. Some people have heard of that, maybe? Okay? I really had to think about it a little bit. What are they doing? Okay? I've been after biodiesel for a while. Do I want to hitch myself to them? And frankly, now this isn't going on YouTube, is it? Okay, but I'm not saying it. do our speakers have like some review before this stuff goes on YouTube, John?
Yes.
Email? Huh? Email. Okay. Who said that? John Buser? Yeah, because, you know, otherwise, I'd really like to speak freely, but
turn off the camera for a minute.
Anyway, just be aware. I'm happy with the people I work with. I will not work for people who are immoral, illegal, or patently unsafe or asking me to do any of those things. And the people I'm working with are none of those things. They're going towards big biodiesel. That's not in my heart, and they know that. They know I'm here today. They support it. So I guess my point about this is there can be some professional risk, because some of you I've talked to in the last couple of days know I'm done with biodiesel probably for a while, because there's other things to go do, right? But it's about this other than financial risk. Just something I guess understand that. What values are important to you? Okay, so I want to be green, but methanol is made from natural gas. It doesn't have to be. Yeah, but it is in commercial quantities. Okay, it's brought in from overseas, in fucking tankers. Okay, so you know it's that dirty secret of commercial biodiesel, right? Again, these are just it's things you need to consider as you get into any business. Next step might be setting some goals. Okay? So you have some environmental goals. Want to be as green as possible? That's a great one. My friend Sean Stenchel, who started Biodiesel rental car 3 years ago now, he really wants B100 and his car is not B99.9, and he will pay it. Okay? It doesn't make any financial sense for him, but he won't put any more petroleum in his cars than B99.9, and he doesn't like doing that. Okay? So setting your goals will help then those whose money you're spending, or your own, or people you're doing business with, understand where we're all headed. So if Frank, you and I jump into a venture together, and we're moving forward, and come out to your farm, and I go, you know, I'm thinking we'll just take the methanol and put it in the air, or some other bad thing, but you know, it's going to save us money. My guess is, Frankie, knowing you like I do, you're going to go, well, Bob, you know what? No, Bob. But it's totally okay, because you know, CH3OH breaks down quickly. You know, no, Bob. Right. Okay. So understanding these things up front, where you're willing to go, where your investors are willing to go, and being able to articulate that. You know, in the co-op, Steve Patterson, you know, what are the goals of the co-op, right? And getting, because when you get people aligned on a goal, it's powerful. Even if they're very different people, right? It's powerful. In the same way that when they're not aligned, because I thought, but you mean I quit my job and I can't put methanol? Damn. So how green can you afford to be or not be? It's for you to decide, and it's for your customers to decide, and for your other stakeholders, your employees, your community to decide. Ultimately, maybe, hopefully not, it's for the regulators to decide. What financial objectives do you want or have to meet? The have to part is if you owe people money at 27%. Okay? There was a big gasp the other day when in the presentation Jerry did about Dongfang biofuels and Ghanaian interest rates around 30, I don't know if Jerry's in the audience. What? 34% or something, right? He said. And there was a gasp in the audience, just like that. What do you think the highest interest rates are on asset-based lending in America today? Yeah, I don't know either, but I know does anybody happen to know if you were borrowing money today on assets?
About 12%.
Yeah, I'm thinking higher.
If it's leased, it's about 18 to 20.
Okay, and I'm still thinking higher. Asset-based lending basically says, I have this, it's worth $1, and they go, no, it's not. Bob, it's worth $0.25, and we'll give you that quarter at up 27% is what we were paying in Colorado about in 1993. Interest rates were higher then, but so levels of debt can come in very, very expensively. And so, again, if you have debt service, you need to know that because the buck stops there. What growth do you anticipate or desire? So, Ed asked me a question the other day about tanks, or maybe it was Tom in this room. And, you know, I don't know what size tanks to get. Well, you know, how much fuel do you want to make? How much fuel do you have to make? I don't know. Okay, we'll see some tools to find out. How are you going to measure your success? You know, is it if people like me? That's my big one. I'm you know, it's crap, and I'll admit it. But financial success, is it, you know, they'll write good things about me when I'm dead? But how will you know when you're there? You know, because otherwise, what kind of fun is that? Are you going in the right direction? How are you going to measure it? Jumping into marketing. Do we have any business school students here? Anybody who has gotten a business degree in the last 100 years? So, marketing 101. The one thing you learn in marketing 101 is, okay, it's all about the 4 P's. Y'all failed. You learned 4 P's in school.
Yeah.
Okay, 5 P's maybe
a
now.
long time ago.
I got my degree in '86, and what I'll tell you is from a business standpoint, and this is why I bring this up, it's one of the most important things you can ask, because you can ask yourself questions. So it's product, place, price, and promotion. So product. What product or services am I going to offer? Am I going to make B100? Am I a producer? If so, am I going to sell B100 only? B99.9? Am I going to be a blender? Am I going to be a distributor? Am I going to do educational outreach? I mean, as we said in Piedmont's presentation that Rachel did, see what they're doing. You guys have all kinds of products, from lettuce to outreach to fuel to, right, co-op to everything, okay? So you need to decide, what are you going to be in, right? And you guys right now, this is a conversation I'm looking forward to having with you, because there's no right answers, okay? There's trade-offs on all of them. When I worked for, I can't see this YouTube. When I worked for another company, we were making biodiesel, and I talked to the owner of that business when I was working there and said, what are we going to do? And he goes, heck, we do wedding samples if it made sense. I said, really? Well, yeah, if it's financially viable. Well, that's, at least I then understood, right? That anything's open, that's kind of fun, unless I really wanted to focus on biodiesel, because I might be, doing permitting for wedding chapels. Place. How or where will you offer your product or services? So if you're a distributor of biodiesel fuel, it's a service, right? But where are you going to offer it? How are you going to offer it? Is it retail? Is it wholesale? Are you delivering fuel? Are you letting people come to your plant and buy fuel in a retail way at your production plant? If you do that, you're insane, okay? Because what happens is you're mixing methanol, mixing caustic, and somebody comes and goes, hey man, I want biodiesel. Get out, okay? People will step over things that say do not enter, okay? Repeatedly. Will you? No. Price. How are you going to set and manage your price on your product or service? Well, I'm going to sell biodiesel for $8 a gallon. I'm going to do what Piedmont did and have people pay $50 a year for the privilege, was the word I heard, of paying $3.50 a gallon for fuel. That's nice, if you can do it, and they have, okay? And that's not easy. You don't just hang out a sign and say, get your biodiesel here at $3.50 and expect the people to come. You get involved in the community, you do all kinds of projects, you stay up late, you talk to the legislature, you do things for people outside the box, and they'll believe in what you're doing enough that you can get that extra money because they perceive an added value to that product or service, okay? I'm going to move on. Promotion. How will you position and promote your product or services? I'm going to have the best biodiesel on the planet. No. I'm going to have the cheapest biodiesel on the planet. No. I'm going to have biodiesel everywhere on the planet. Okay? No. All of these are viable options. Well, they're not. All these are viable thoughts, right? Wide distribution. Makes sense. Can. There's people who, and I've heard it quite often, is that it's not a bad thing to do at all. It's just our fuel is better than ASTM quality. We go for better conversion than it requires, okay? Period. And so you can start to position yourself by differentiating yourself from people around you, okay? But again, these are the kind of things you would sit around with a cup of coffee, a beer, in the woods, in a conference room, and chew on, okay? And there's no right answers, and they're not chiseled in stone. They're chiseled in Jell-O, maybe, until you say they're chiseled in stone. So we are not going to put methanol into the environment, says my boss Frankie, ding, 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 in stone, okay? Because if I'm working with you, I've now accepted that. This is a hypothetical example, but I'm looking for you. And so understanding these types of things are going to affect how well you succeed or not. So we're going to look at each of these in some detail. I kind of talked through these. You're going to be a blender? If so, how are you going to blend? All kinds of great strategies. One of the ones I thought when I was with Rocky Mountain Biodiesel was blending appropriate to the season. So last summer, we were selling B99.9 in tanker trucks to Graydon's home state in Utah to a company at that time called VNC Biodiesel. And all this product was being burned in over-the-road trucks that were going up and over Vail Pass between Utah and Colorado and sort of in the western states. Vail Pass is 10,800 feet, is that right? Something a lot like that. And the trucks were burning mostly B75. They were blending it themselves. There were some truckers running B99.9, And I would lay in bed at night in July, wondering what the temperature in Silverthorne was. Because our fuel has a cloud point of 42, which answer to life, universe, and everything. But if it's the cloud point of your fuel, I'm thinking in July, this morning, in Silverthorne, might have been around 42. You just don't know, and they will stop up there. Okay, so understanding what you're going to offer, but the blending appropriate this season makes a lot of sense to me. In January, if we see a front coming in and it's pushing down, if I can offer that person I'm selling fuel to, this was a small distributor, and Cache Valley, where he is, happens to be similar temperatures to ours, so we understood each other, I could tell him, hey Bob, go put, I see a front coming. His name was Bob also. Always trust people named Bob. Go put diesel in your tank tonight, Bob. Thanks, Bob. Armantrout for the heads up. I'm offering a service now. Okay. Fuel distribution is a product and service or a service that some of us are in. This means you're going to buy trucks, known in the industry generally as rolling stock. How much rolling stock do you have? You got 1,000 gallons. Because I have a 1,000-gallon truck. I've got 60,000 gallons. Maybe I've got 9 6,500-gallon trucks, whatever that is. So you have rolling stock. This is a really different business than this. This is trucking, right? This is transit fuel production. Brain surgery. They're just different things, right? And so people who naturally assume, I'm going to go get into biodiesel, which part? Because they're different businesses, guys. This is right where you're at, is looking at different products and services and what it costs to get into. They're all great ideas. How much capital do you have? Consulting. Again, doing things like educational outreach. We heard Rachel talk about how Piedmont, you guys have been pretty successful here, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to put you on the spot for a second if I can. If you don't want to answer it, I totally understand and apologize. When you and Leaf were going to the community colleges and offering those classes, did you do that to make money?
No, absolutely not.
How much did you get paid for that?
It was probably for a 3-hour class.
Yes.
About $15 an hour.
Okay.
And we probably spent at least 6 hours for every 3-hour class.
Right, in preparation.
So 3-hour prep, and we actually taught for 3 hours.
Okay. But your educational outreach, in my opinion, Rachel, one, as you mentioned, you didn't do it to go get customers, but as you started graduating classes, you got customers. Unintended consequence on the positive side of the ledger, right? The other thing is that I heard you say yesterday, is there's a certain amount of hours you get for free, and then it's $100 an hour. You guys bill every month, don't you, for people that want this? They paid the stupid tax. Those are Lyle's words. Numerous occasions, over and over.
We call it tuition.
Tuition. So the point is that these guys and gals have gone out and through lots of hard work, sweat equity, successes, failures, blood, sweat, and tears, I'm thinking, and insane desire, okay? Have learned a bunch of stuff, and it has value, okay? And so, again, moving on. Design, build, another one. Another place, people that you guys have been pretty successful in Piedmont. Pacific Biodiesel has been pretty successful here. Some of you in this room have been successful here. Place. So you're going to sell wholesale at what scale? So, Lawrence, the first time you came to get fuel, and you invited me down to Denver Biodiesel, and thank you very much for that, because I met a lot of great folks doing that. I wanted to be able to use you guys as the canary in the coal mine and your co-op members, so because I didn't have a TDI anymore. And so you said, I'll bring down a tote. And I went, damn, I got 3-inch hoses, and it's 140 gallons a minute. I mean, literally, stand back, right? So gravity feed works. We made a stinger, right? We switched it down to 2-inch. But what scale are you going to do your sales at? Because it matters, okay? And I don't know what I meant by relationships. What's the connection from the plan? So I'm just going to skip that one. Retail from the plant. Again, what scale? So do you sell 250-gallon totes? Will you squirt it into somebody's TDI? Is it 6,500-gallon tankers? Could be retail, typically not. For somebody like Boulder Gas, perhaps, it would be a retail relationship because you'd be collecting the taxes and paying them on. Do you do deliveries? So the place would be yours, where you want it. That can be real fun. So I did fuel delivery for 2 years on Maui, and it can be not very lucrative. It take a lot of time and be problematic in terms of a safety, all of that standpoint. You know, nothing worse than getting out there and having the pump not work. Whether you're taking oil or putting fuel on, it's the same deal. It's like you're all out there, you did it, you're scheduled to do it today, and damn. Retail stations, whole different business. So I think Charlie was talking about this the other day, where, you know, with the idea, and that's when it came out, there was some discussion about what Sequential has done. Cool idea, totally different from trucking, totally different from fuel production, different businesses, okay? Co-op supply. Again, I'm a great believer in this, both in Maui and here, and if we had the fuel available right now, we're trying desperately to get it to co-ops in Texas, because true believers are cool people, period. Price, well, diesel fuel is a commodity. There's, what, 40 billion gallons-ish of diesel used on road in America every year. I'll buy it generally if I'm done too public, as long as, hey, what's the price? I heard about that biodiesel, what's the price? Well, you know, it's 3 cents higher than retail, than diesel right now. Well, no, I'm little. And you guys know this, you've sold fuel, 3 cents. It's like, no, you know what? Don't let the gate hit you. And there's nothing wrong with that. It is a commodity. And so some of us who get sort of worked up about sustainability things think that 3 cents a gallon is a little price to pay, but understand that fuel is a commodity. And so most people are going to treat it as such when it comes to price. So biodiesel input costs, not price. Cost is what I pay to get the inputs. Price is what I charge you for the biodiesel. The input costs are minimally tied to the price of petroleum, in my opinion. Okay? 2 reasons. One is it's the whole transportation thing, in and out. So diesel prices go up. It costs me more on trucking to get methanol and feedstock in that in. Okay? That's a small part of the cost of a gallon of biodiesel. Petroleum costs go up. Methanol costs may or may not go up. Typically, they don't. They tend to do whatever's going on with big plants offshore in Trinidad and Africa. So the input costs really aren't tied to petroleum. But biodiesel price, in most consumers' mind, is tied directly to the price of petroleum, even if it's a differential. So I'm willing to spend 15 cents more. You know, you're willing to spend $1.15 more, Michael, because you're insane. Right? It doesn't have to be insane, but you are insane. Yeah. So understanding this pricing psychology is important, okay? Because, again, if you're going to go into commercial production, I can sell fuel to the co-op, okay? And they would pay a higher price, but typically I don't charge them a higher price. It's such small sales. The extra margin I'm going to make on those dollars, I'm not going to do that to those guys because I like what they're doing, okay? So as long as I'm covering my costs, I'm going to be happy, okay? But as you grow, a lot of your sales, right now in the cities, we sell fuel to the city of Denton because they help finance our plant at $1.30 a gallon for B99.9. How nice is that? Wow. How much does that hurt? Okay, but again, that's debt service. So they put down a big chunk of cash. But so understanding pricing strategies are important because what's happened with most commercial producers I know is when they get into the market and biodiesel is cheaper than diesel right now, things look great. And then diesel goes down and it's like, oh, you know, people are going, well, I just can't afford it. You know, we're a school district. We have budgeting constraints, right? Books or fuel, right? We don't want particulates in the kids' lunch, but we need books, okay? So your sales are going to look like a pie of different prices, perhaps, okay? And understanding that mix is important. Floating with the price of petroleum diesel is common, but it may not be at the same price. It might be slightly above, slightly below, okay? Again, dealing with fuel distributors, you know, all I can say is that, you know, they make they provide a very valuable service and it's on margin, right? So they've invested in trucks and tanks. They need their margins. If they can make better margins on regular diesel and biodiesel day in and day out, ultimately they're probably going to, do that. There are some cool distributors who do things for reasons other than price. Star Oil Company up in Washington, Portland comes to mind, and there's others. You know, Bob Hugo so there's a few. But again, out of 100 distributors, you know, it's not that way. Back to that Walmart mentality slide I showed a couple days ago. Lawrence?
Quick comment about the
Yes,
price thing. I remember when I called up Bob, I said, you know, we need fuel. We can't make enough. We got a lot of people who want fuel. So I called up Bob and I said, Bob, what's your bottom price for biodiesel? And I had talked to him before and he floated a number at me and I said, what's your bottom price, Bob? And he said, Lawrence, I told you my bottom price. Why would I tell you anything else if I didn't? And I said, well, you know, a lot of companies talk about, you know, price for this, price for that. He already quoted us the bottom price. The point being that this really ties into the goals and the attitude that Bob previously talked about and the values that you place on it. You know, he said he wants to help because he can see the need at the consumer end on how it's going to help his company. And so when you talk about price stuff, you know, it's like, who are you dealing with? What's the person? What's the value behind it that the price suggests and reflects? And for us, when he said, this is my price, he gave us rock bottom. And we were able to provide fuel to the company. It was a pain in the butt for everybody, including him. But, you know, that was living the values and stuff, and that's one of the things that I really appreciate you about.
And you guys, again, you were good canaries.
Yeah.
Thanks. Offering contract pricing that accounts for both issues, okay, the price of petroleum and the price of biodiesel inputs, can be a viable strategy. So a 3-month contract. So I'll hold the price, you know, and I'm not going to go above $2.50 wholesale, okay, but I can't go below $1.95, okay? And I'm only going to move in nickel increments, okay? And so if I have that discussion with you up front, and I can hold that for 3 months, but if it, you know, if petroleum for some reason really goes ka-chow, or my inputs really go up, I need to talk to you. And by the same token, right, and this happened with Hugo in Utah, he was very cool about this, is as petroleum went up, I really tried to hold the line, and he basically said, Bob, you know, if you need a few more cents, say so. And I said, thank you, right? So when you have those relationships with distributors, and particularly ones, when you build relationships, it's important. It can be very helpful. Yes?
I wanted to ask, that's something we struggle with, because our producer, his prices stay constant, but when we start shopping around, our retailer, his price, he wants his price to kind of stay the same, and so it puts us in a position where every 5 cents that our price goes up, should we charge him another 5 cents? Do we get to be the ones as the distributors to say, I'm going to make 25 cents a gallon, and whatever he wants to raise his price to, he can? Because he seems to want to say he wants to make 25
Sure.
cents a
So
gallon.
it all comes down to risk. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, and then I'll talk to you guys next week as well. But it all comes down to risk. And you know, if you say no to him, you know what? No, I'm sorry. We're passing the price on. That works unless there's no customers at that price, and then you're screwing yourself anyway, right? So it's forecasting is important. What's going to happen? Who knows what's going to happen to the price of petroleum diesel in the next 6 weeks? Yeah, me neither. Depends on whether we nuke or in, hurricanes, all of that. You know, most of us believe that over the next 5 or 10 years, it's going to do this, right? Or actually this, up and to the right, right? But what's it going to do in the next 6 or 8 weeks? I don't know. Understand the taxes and margin in your supply chain, okay? So, because you need to be able to talk through those prices, I'm guessing you guys are getting pretty well versed with this, right? So you know what your state tax is, you know what the tax advantage may or may not be for biodiesel. You don't have a tax holiday yet, do you? It's getting close though, isn't it? Yeah, and you just have to know about it. And when you build these relationships with distributors, they'll tell you what their margins are. And if they won't, find a new partner. That's my opinion. Promotion. If it's sold into the diesel market as a commodity, promotion is essential. Why did I say that? Price dictates sales potential. Yeah, it's not essential. There should be a not right there. So if you're selling as a commodity, price rules. Okay? You know you promote your product. It's got closed carbon. It's got, you know, keeps particulates out of kids. It's all true. Okay? But if it's a nickel more a gallon, there's a lot of folks are just not going to buy it. And they'll say, I'm with you, it's cool, it's all good. You can't, okay? So promotion doesn't make a lot of sense there. If it's sold at a premium, okay, what you guys are doing, what a lot of us want to do, I believe should happen, and I think will happen with biodiesel in some senses, at least at the community scale. At the community scale, we need to have a premium. We can't have the cheapest biodiesel in Texas. We won't, okay? We did it in Colorado. And so I need to find 2 or 3 distributors and help them get customers, or a lot of them already have these type of customers, who will pay more, okay? And then you need to differentiate. Then you need to talk about keeping the dollars local. Then you need to talk about the fact that in Denton, for example, we're collecting waste oil. We're from the Metroplex in Denton County. We're turning it into fuel at the landfill with methane gas, and we're delivering most of the fuel to the city of Denton. It's going into buses and trucks and other things right there, okay? So if you like, go buy the palm oil or orangutan-killing fuel that's coming in through the Houston Ship Channel, and you know, see you in hell. Yeah. Sorry, my value's coming out, okay? But you know, big biodiesel, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, there isn't. Is it better than big petroleum? I don't know. But it's something that is. It's not going to go away because us grassroots people want it to, but it's going to be on a different track than we are. And so when I say I'm leaving biodiesel, I'm leaving big biodiesel. Okay? FAQs lists for new users are helpful, helping them understand ASTM compliance. The Department of Energy guidelines, I encourage all of you to go look at this PDF. If you Google DOE biodiesel guidelines, I think it's on the NBD site, although I try to not go there often. You'll find it.
Is that the one that in our policies?
Yeah, it's actually Department of Energy. It's a PDF about 87 pages long, and it's good. And again, I offer this to my customers, we do, and routinely, because we want them to do what DOE says. And if they do what DOE says and they still have problems and we need ASTM specs, then, you know, caveat emptor. In other words, we've made good fuel, you followed the best guidelines that are available based on the tax dollars you spent to make them, okay, from the Department of Energy. Typically, if people follow those guidelines and buy ASTM quality fuel, they're not having problems, except for sterols. And gluticides. Let's move financial planning. And I know I'm going through this stuff really fast. This is going to be available online on the website for the conference. And it's just an outline. It's things to make you think. Capital costs versus operating costs. So I'm going to start a lemonade stand. My capital costs are my table. I need to borrow it from Grandma, and she wants $5. Okay. I need to get some cups. I need to get a pitcher. These are upfront capital costs. I'm going to spend one time. I'm going to depreciate those, okay, and I'm going to add capital at times. Operating costs are the things I'm buying every day, okay, the lemonade, the water, and those sorts of things. And I'm going to make sure that my customers actually return the water in the lemonade to the system. Nice, right? So understanding the difference there is important. And you know, we're going to look at a slide on break-even analysis that'll help understand that. Funding sources. You know, last year, biodiesel looked like .com. You're in biodiesel, have some money, whack. You know, have some money, whack. Vulture capitalists, venture capitalists. Okay, you know, these guys want and gals want big returns. That's nice. So do I. They can, but just so be aware, there's different funding sources. Generally, companies will get a mix. So I'm guessing that Piedmont, you have some of all of these. The public lender would be like a revolving line of credit for mad money just in case poop hits the fan, if there's a, okay? Okay, you have all of those. There may be others, okay? They all have different interest rates, all have benefits and drawbacks. You know, if you can get private investors like Grandma, and Grandma's 107, that might be good, you know? She'll smile down on you from heaven. Fixed versus variable costs. Fixed costs are, and again, there's going to be more detail on this on an upcoming slide, but fixed costs are your overhead. Salaries, rent, insurance, wastewater permits, okay? Whether I make a gallon of biodiesel or not, I'm going to pay, if I get permitted with you and it's $600 a year, I owe you that, whether I make biodiesel or not, don't I? Fixed cost, okay? Variable costs, direct materials, direct labor. People will get into this funny game of going, well, you know, because I consider biodiesel labor to be fixed, okay? It's truly a step variable. We can make a lot of gallons until we need to hire the next person. And to hire the next person maybe means a second shift or a split shift. So now I've taken a step up. But I can make from 0 gallons, literally, to Steve and I have been Bertha could do by ourselves 40 or 60,000 gallons a month. 0 to 60, okay, with just the two of us. So don't spend a lot of time deciding, is it fixed, is it variable? Throw it in one camp or the other and understand it. I encourage you, if in doubt, put it in your fixed costs, okay? And you'll see why in a minute. Wow. Well, so what this is, can you actually read this from the back?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I simplified this sheet. This is my working spreadsheet, okay? And I took out a bunch of columns that had to do with sodium methylate, potassium methylate. This is a break-even cost analysis, okay? So I threw this one together on July 11th, but this is something I use all the time. And like you, Rachel, this is in my head, okay? So I've talked to many of you over the years, and I could just spout this without even looking at it because, again, it's like a tachometer or a speedometer. It's a control on the business if you're a a business manager, okay? So here's my direct materials, okay? The input cells I marked in green, so these are ones I can go tweak. So basically, I'm calculating direct materials. This is a waste vegetable oil based fuel. This is assuming $1 per gallon, okay? And so if you take $1 per gallon collected, you'll get about 75% of that goes to your reactor, because the rest of it's that, what were you calling it? General ugliness, Frankie? Something like that. That stuff, badness. The rest of it's bad, 25% badness, 75% oil. So if it costs me $1 a gallon to go out into the Metroplex, Dallas, Fort Worth area, and pick up a gallon of fuel, okay? Only 75% of that's going to go to my reactor, because the rest of it's towels and birds and pickles and bits, right? Water mostly. So that's how I got to 17.7 cents a pound, okay? I'm further assuming a 77% reaction yield. I'm using 22% methanol and 18 grams per liter. And, you know, so these are real world numbers these days in my life. My methanol at $1.36 a gallon, my KOH is 65 cents a pound, additives at $40 a gallon. That would be biocide. We're actually not putting that in right now, so that penny is not really true. But when I see critters, it'll be true. So we have it standing by. So what this is saying is, per gallon of biodiesel, okay, it's costing us right now $2.25 in direct material costs. The labor is there, none of that, right? This is just the stuff we go spend and buy at the biodiesel supply store, okay? So other variable costs. These variable costs are things that can be directly attributed to a unit of output, whether it's an hour of consulting time, whether it's a gallon of biodiesel, okay? And so those things in my world right now is the NBB royalty, where we bow down to Joe Bader. I'm sorry, Joe, I don't really know you. I don't really feel that way about the NBB, frankly. And you're right, Frank. Yeah, you don't know what I'm joking or not. I don't feel that way about the NBB. So I retract it all. But we paid him $1 a gallon, a penny a gallon rather. A sales rep commission, we're not paying it right now because we don't have any sales reps and we're selling everything we can make right now anyway, okay? Wash water disposal. I'm going to talk about how we're doing that on a subsequent slide, but this is what we're paying right now sometimes, okay? Listener disposal, I'll tell you what we're doing on the side stream slide, but we're not paying anything right now, nor are we getting any revenue. So then we dropped, so my total variable cost now, I took this, I added the 5.5 cents, which was the NBB, and the wash water disposal cost, and I'm at $2.30.6 per gallon of direct costs. Again, haven't paid insurance, haven't paid my salary.
Hey Bob, I'm just curious why you put the NBB royalty in variable costs.
Because it's paid per gallon of fuel. Okay, you're right.
Don't they set that cost and you don't really have control over it?
No, it doesn't matter, I pay it. So we keep track of every gallon we sell. You guys probably do this too. It's a per gallon charge, so you pay them $2,500 for your membership one time.
Yeah.
One time, it might be annual. Thank you. Okay.
So by variable, you just mean it fluctuates with the amount.
It means every gallon we sell, we owe them a penny. It's an ongoing royalty that you pay to NBB. Okay. So it is a direct variable cost. Okay. So now, so we made a gallon of biodiesel and we spent $2.30.6 out of the pocket. Okay. So we need revenue. So now we're going to take revenue against that. Okay. So this assumes a sales price of $2.20 a gallon right now. Okay. That's a reasonable price. That's actually a low price in Dallas right now.
For what?
Wholesale, B99.9. No, yes, I'm sorry, B99.9. Okay. Because then I've got the 50 cents I'm going to get back per gallon of the lender's credit. Okay? So my revenue is the $2.20 that I'll get if I sell you a gallon of fuel, B99.9, for $2.20. Would you pay that right now? Is that a good price to you?
It's right about what we're paying.
Okay.
That doesn't factor in federal road tax.
So that's wholesale. This is wholesale, right?
We've always bought B99 with the taxes paid.
Right, because you guys don't want to have to do the 720s to the IRS every month report. You really don't want to. You're right. And here's the 50 cents back. Okay. So my total revenue is $270. Does that make sense? Basic net.
Wait a minute. You haven't put in the
the interest cost for that 50 cents, because they're 90 days out, if that.
Well, actually, I have instead. Well, you're right, I haven't. But you know, there's all kinds of time value of money stuff assumed here because I've got payables, but I've got receivables, and so this is again finger in the wind. How am I doing? I like to believe that if I'm within a nickel here, okay, that's about as good as I think I can get by throwing in costs. Okay, so 270 coming in, 230 going out. That says for every gallon that we generate, if these things hold true, we'll get 39.4 cents on what's called contribution margin. This is not profit. This is money that contributes to pay the fixed costs. Okay? Contribution margin. This is not financial accounting, it's managerial accounting. Those of you who've taken accounting understand that difference. Financial accounting is what you see on financial statements. Managerial accounting is what people do inside, like me, to make sure we're not going to lose our shirt, or if we do, we know how badly. Okay? So we're generating 39.4 cents per gallon. Here I've assumed a fixed cost, totally fallacious. This is very low. This is not a real cost for the plant I'm at right now. This was about what Berthoud was. Okay? $3,000. So for Berthoud, $3,000 a month in rent, $3,400 I think. $3,400 in rent, $400 in utilities, $1,000 a month in various insurance. So I'm up to what, $5,000. Salaries for Stevie and I, and when you do salaries, you got to burden them with those payroll tax things, huh? So if I make $10 an hour, you add 28 or 30% burden if you're going to do this exercise, and you know you get up to 25 grand pretty quick. So salary for Stevie and I together was about 12 grand a month. It sounds like we made a lot of money, but you know, do the math. Well, we did get paid pretty well. So between 40 to 50,000 a year for each of us. Okay. Which is why the business isn't open anymore. For other reasons. But you know, frankly, and this is one of the hard things about small-scale biodiesel. Okay, I can do cost analysis. I can fix boilers. I can do 720 forms for the IRS. I can do it all. You guys have seen this, certainly, Rachel. So, for people who think that they're going to go hire, you could go hire. And this is going to sound bad, but I think it's true. You could go hire 5 people for $10 an hour. They can't do what I can do. Okay? They can't do what I can do, or what a lot of you can do too. And so you need to be a jack of all trades and be able to do lots of things. And $10 an hour, or you've got Shutter, $6 an hour employees, you're doing, well, that's not a living wage, so you're not doing a service to them, and you're not going to do a service to your business either, in my opinion. Yes, sir?
I don't know much about the economy, but how do you keep the feedstock price from going up?
I light a candle in church. Those of you who know me well, there's some deep irony in that statement. But you can't.
No, I mean, if you're buying used grease from somebody, is that correct?
You collect your own.
No, we're collecting our own.
What's the disposal cost that they're offsetting on?
So the bottom line is you can't control your price of feedstock. The only way you can is through buying futures, and people do this, okay? But again, futures is a gamble, and it's a good thing to do at larger scales, but you're betting on a future price. And so let's say the futures right now for soy are running something like this. And again, you can see it on the CBOT, Chicago Board of Trade website. They're running 3 or 4 cents a pound higher than the current price.
Or you can do the fuel security or feedstock security in direct relationship.
Wow, I want to talk to you about that. So the bottom line is, if I have $25,000 I have to pay every month in fixed costs, rent, my wastewater permit, all of that stuff, how many gallons do I have to make to pay this off? So I take $25,000, I divide it by 39.4 cents, and it says, you need to make 63,447 gallons, Bob, to come out even. Okay? If you get into business to come out even, you're not going to. Okay? So then I can calculate my gallons of feedstock per month. I can look at the gallons, so that's an assumed reaction yield. I can look at the gallons of feedstock collected per month, assuming a 75% collection yield. That's taking out the badness. Okay? So what this says is, and again, these are real world numbers. Okay? Yes?
Not to get too much into this, but your feedstock cost seems very high for if you're collecting it
It's
yourself.
$1 a gallon.
Okay.
It's $1 a gallon.
$1.72 per gallon bio. Where's the
Okay, so what's happening is, it's right here. You've got a 75% collection yield. So if it costs me $1 to get a gallon off the street, 3/4 of that, 1/4 of that's going to the trash. So take $1, divide it by 0.75, and that's the cost per gallon to reactor. Okay, it's going to be $1.20 something, right? Then take that and divide it by your reaction yield. That's 77, and you get exactly, if my Excel is right, $2.72. That's what that is. Yes.
What are the components of that dollar per gallon?
I might have a slide that talks about that, but it's basically the cost of trucking, keeping trucks on the road. Okay, so how many gallons, if I send a 2,500 gallon truck out today to pick up oil, how many gallons can I get, and how much am I paying the driver, how much is my trucking payment, how much is the insurance, how much is the fuel, and you divide that math. Obviously, the more gallons I collect, the better off I am, to a point until I have to buy another truck, and then you kind of start over again, right? A little bit. It's just like labor. This analysis, break-even analysis, in any business venture, John?
I was just saying, and don't you would have to do this whole thing all over again for your trucking business because you have
Yes.
fixed and variable costs with that as well.
Yes, any business.
So just to say it's $1 a gallon would be not entirely accurate.
Well, that's exactly right, and that's why that cell is green. That's my input. That's my guess for my business. That's my forecasting numbers. These green numbers are either actuals based on prices I pay, or my guesses. Forecasting is important. You know, you do it every day, every one of you. How many of you have mortgages? Yeah, how many have kids? How many pay rent? It's all of us, right? You're forecasting every day. God, should I get a new job or should I cut up the credit cards? Am I going to get that raise or not? Right? I mean, you are. Okay? So don't be afraid to do it for your business before you throw a bunch of money in. Take your big crayon, a big cheap pad, and start putting numbers on it. It's not hard. Okay? This might make it look a little hard, but it really isn't. For any, you're right, John. I mean, for any business, not just biodiesel. Financial planning. So here's the steps to take. And I think I have it coming up on a slide, but I'm going to say it now. If you go to the Small Business Administration website, which I believe is www.sba.gov, okay? They have all kinds of great stuff from, you know, break-even calculators to basically everything you're seeing here. You're going to go, he stole it off that website. You know, I actually went to school and learned it, and then the School of Hard Knocks, but all these tools are there. Sales plan. So now I know that I need to sell 63,000 gallons, at least. So I want to sell 80. If I go change, I can then say if I sell more gallons, okay, all this margin becomes profit, right? So once I've paid and broken even, every gallon I sell above my break-even point, if I sell 100 gallons, I've got $39 of profit, right? So how much profit do I want? I want 20% return, I want 10% return. I can figure that out and say, I need to sell 92,000 gallons, let's say, whatever that is, okay? So the next step is to make a sales plan. So Lawrence, can I sell you 92,000 gallons every month?
No.
We'll need to talk, won't we?
Yeah.
Okay? I need to figure out
How
where
about
that fuel's going to go. Right, where that fuel's going to go, how I'm going to get it there, and how much that's going to cost me in margin, and go back and plug that into the break-even spreadsheet, right? Because if I start having distribution costs, okay, that's a variable cost for those gallons, right? So a sales plan, basically, and I didn't throw it up because you know, fairly detailed, but all it is customer A's, I expect to buy 500 gallons a month. So I lay it out for months by month. 500 gallons for customer A. Customer B, 13,000 gallons a month, 2 tankers a month. Okay. Customer C, 17,000 gallons a month. Okay. And you can see how that would look, right? And I'm not, you know, I need to get names on A, B, and C rather quickly. Okay. That's the sales guy or gal's job. Okay. And hopefully you've done some work up front to understand if that demand is even there, and if you can get it there at the price you need to. So that's what a sales plan looks like. That says, how am I going to sell my gallons? It's gallons and it's price over time. So by month, assume prices. So for customer A, I'm selling it, you know, 500 gallons a month at $2.20. Customer B, I'm selling 13,000 gallons a month at $2.15. Okay, and you lay all that out, and at the bottom then, by month, I'll have projected revenue. That makes sense? And it'll be the weighted average price for all those gallons. Okay? Then you're going to do a production plan. So Rachel, no, really it's Chris now is your fuel guy these days, making all the fuel. Chris, we need to make 92,000 gallons a month. Ooh, Bob, the best we've done was 80, and man, the jalopy she was spinning, I'm making that up. But, you know, we were backs to the wall getting this fuel made. Can you do 92, Leaf, or Chris? Well, probably, but this is what I'm going to need. Okay, so I'm going to need a new transfer pump. Might need, right? There's going to be maybe some capital costs. There's also a ramp. Can you do it today? Can you start today at that higher rate? Well, no, Bob, because we're going to need to get these other things in place. We need a bigger storage tank on inbound, whatever it might be, okay? So your production plan is going to be gallons produced, forecast, the F word. Looking forward, how many gallons per month can we make? Your production plan needs to support your sales plan. They need to be rationalized between the two. So the sales guy goes, I sold all this, when can I have it? And you know, all of you worked in industries where this is true. Sales guys promise the world, us poor op schmoes have to deliver it, okay? So the production plan supports the sales plan, or the sales plan comes down. Or the production plan says, you're only gonna sell 92,000? Hell, I can make 150, sell more, right? But this is the process you go through. So it's gallons produced by month, time phased, and that should, you get that in your sales plan, and you can start figuring out how good a shape you're in or not. From those two pieces, with your cost breakdown that we saw on the break-even analysis, you can do what's called pro forma financial statements. I told you I know this stuff. These are generally done in income statement, balance sheet format. So an income statement is profit and loss. Again, you do this every month. I make $2,000 a month, my rent is $500, my groceries are $300, my tequila is $50, and you add it all up, and whether you do it in Quicken or not, or you do it in your head or not, the fact is that somehow you're balancing your life or not, okay? But doing these in a pro forma way means taking then that sales plan, that production plan, the sales plan is going to give you revenue, okay? The production plan, if you take those gallons and multiply it by your variable cost per unit, okay, now you have cost of goods sold. So I've got an income statement right there. Profit less cost of goods sold, okay, net income. Overhead, or G&A, general administrative. So put these together. Cash flow is basically a monthly summation or accumulation of profit and loss for each month. So the first month, I make $100. So my cash flow is up 100. The next month, I lose 200 bucks. I spend 200 more than I bring in. So now I'm down 100. I hope honey, can I borrow the checkbook? I mean, you need to plan that. So you need to do a cash budget looking forward. And again, you can do it right off those monthly income statements that you created off of the sales plan, the production plan with your cost elements. Does this kind of make sense? So you're all going to be MBAs when you're done with this. Sort of. Tracking mechanisms. So how are we going to know how we're doing? Because this is all pro forma. This is how we think it could be. What do we really do? You know, if I go buy a new pump, okay, and I take it out of petty cash, and I don't tell anybody, you know, it happened, but not as far as accounting is concerned. And so, if you're, and this happens in every business, and it certainly happens in every household. Okay, you know, the money's going places, and you're doing it. You know, and you can blame the wife and the kids because they're doing it too. But you're doing it as well, where, you know, I just all of a sudden the money's just gone. So you need to be able to track it. You need to be able to review your progress periodically to see how you're, see how I'm doing it now, to see how much time I have left. How are we doing? You know, do we need to fire people? Do we need to hire people? Do we need to look for a new space because we need more room? Do we need to go look for a new space because I'm late on rent? Okay? Again, this sounds like common sense. This is why most businesses fail. I'm not saying most businesses fail, although I think you do, especially restaurants. But you know, 100 that start, after 5 years, there's not 100 of them left, are there? But it's because they have not, again, you don't need to do it with Excel, you can do it on paper with a pencil, okay? They have not chewed through this to see if it makes any sense, okay? And then review the periodic. Contingency plans. Grandma, aren't I your favorite grandson? I need some money, okay? Or a revolving line of credit that you don't tap into, which is what a lot of businesses do. You don't tap into it at all. You know, I have an American Express green card in my wallet. I never use it, okay? But it's just there. It's my contingency plan. Regulatory requirements. Do your homework up front. You think, Gary, would you agree with me on this one? Rocky Mountain Biodiesel did not do as much as they should. No one probably does as much as they should. The gentleman who started that, it was not Biodiesel Industries, by the way. He didn't talk to the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. He didn't know, so because he didn't talk to him, because he didn't look on the internet, because he didn't even think about it probably, he found out a year and a half later that he should have filed for an air pollution emissions notice on methanol before he broke ground. Okay? I can tell you that, in all honesty, and the nice folks at where you work with the state will work with you. They didn't want to shut us down. Okay? They would have, and I would have supported them. And I said so. You know, if we can't get it done, we're not going to be here. Okay? And then we get to the end of this presentation, you'll see how some of those decisions were made. It was not based, we didn't do any wastewater dumping. Actually, some was done there prior to me, okay, in an unpermitted way. And the town of Berthoud stepped all over that and cut his, I don't know if you heard of this one, but it wasn't, you know, they cut off the 4-inch line that he had basically hooked to the sewer, unpermitted, okay, and in a heartbeat, okay. So do your homework up front. It's a lot cheaper. The Small Business Administration really can help, both the website and looking at it, and again, Margo was very helpful. Because not that she knew the answer to biodiesel and the technical stuff, not at all. It was she could tell me where to go. And that was very helpful. Federal requirements that I'm aware of, this is absolutely not an all-inclusive list, okay? But it's things like EPA registration. So if you are selling a fuel or fuel additive in this country, thou must be registered with the Environmental Protection Agency, period, okay? In order to get that, you need to be a member of the NDB to get access to their Tier 1 and Tier 2 health effects testing stuff that we paid for with tax dollars, but we get to pay the NDB for again. It's something like that, right? Okay. But bottom line is that's the rule. You can hate it, you can try to change it, and I applaud those who worked with the NDB, so Mark would be one, to get that small membership. I mean, that was huge. She cut the price of us getting in half, right? But the fact is, you better do it, because if you don't, you know, thinking that you can hang on a shingle, we're selling biodiesel here and nobody's going to know, is just madness, okay? Because, we'll see in a minute, you need to register with the Colorado Department of Revenue for fuel tax reporting, okay? And they talk. Yes, sir?
Hey, Bob, do you know, were anybody from the MBB invited?
To this conference?
Yes.
I don't know that. John?
No,
No.
not specifically. No.
Yeah, sure, sure. You know, it's a good thing to think for next year. Sure, they're not bad people. They're soybean farmers, and the people they get out and get no. But anyway, what they're doing is good, right? I mean, it is. Didn't we want biodiesel out there? I did. So I think what they're doing is good, and I need to be more careful about not joking about stuff like that, because what they're doing is good. They're not evil. But let me tell you this, as a quick aside, we don't need them to validate what we're doing, the NDB. We don't need that. You homebrewers. I'm not a homebrewer, so I can't say it. But us who believe in small-scale biodiesel, we don't need them to tell us how good we are or not. So those of us who are going, well, the NDB should let us in, the NDB should do this, the NDB should do that, get over it, in my opinion. And I'd be happy to talk to you about it later if you want to hear more. They're good people. They're doing what they do. Do what you do. Federal employee identification numbers, basically where you got to apply with the IRS so that you can withhold payroll taxes for any employees that you might have, right?
Hey, Bob.
Yes, sir.
Are you going to talk at all about structural business stuff? For example, we're an LLC, should we be partners, should we be
No.
employees?
No. And that's not one of my knowledge areas, mostly because I've lived outside of the business, mostly outside the country, and that's changed a lot over time. So unfortunately, no.
Find a good lawyer.
There you go. Yeah, that's exactly right.
And if anybody wants to know about that, we just went through it, and I'll be happy to answer.
Very good. So Steve Patterson from Denver Biodiesel. All right. So you need to apply with the IRS to be a blender. Okay. None of these are terribly expensive. The MBB membership is the biggest one, but you got to do them. Then there's undoubtedly more. I just threw this together Thursday night. State requirements totally depends on your location. Period. These are ones that I became aware of having done business in Colorado. You know, things like this are going to apply in some states. Most of these will apply in some way in all states, I believe. They did in Hawaii as well. Fuel tax license. You know, the state keeps the roads nice for us and our TDIs and our SBO vehicles, you know, and you got to pay for that, in my opinion. Withholding tax, payroll, render's license may or may not be required in the state you're in. Gary,
Required in the state?
I don't know that, because we did not do these collections ourselves with the state. Does anybody know if you have to have a render's license in Colorado to haul waste vegetable oil?
Yeah.
We've heard that you don't.
No.
And I believe not. I have not ever heard from anybody, Steve, that you did, but
You ever heard of it?
again, you could call up, who is it in Utah that regulates that?
It's county.
It's each county, so you could, you know, talk to the county and find out. So what you do, Steve, is you go to the county you don't live in and you call them.
Yes.
I'm kidding, because that may be different in the county you're in, right? I'm kidding, that was a joke.
Hey Bob, I don't think you need a.
Well, but it'll give you an idea, right? So, period. Call and find out. I'm a great believer in opening the front door and asking questions and paying the price, right? Grady's done it. John?
I was just saying, on Colorado's, I don't believe you need a render's license to haul oil, but I believe you do need a solid waste permit to
Yeah,
haul.
and that's very common. Because it's about vector control and other things, and stormwater pollution and runoff. So if I've got a bunch of barrels in my backyard, okay, and they're doing that whole biological frappe thing, okay, and they're going over the sides because I left a couple over it, and then rainwater goes in, and what comes out first when that happens? The oil does, doesn't it? Okay.
Yeah, I think
It's
pretty
on the
much
parking lot.
any quantity of waste vegetable oil is
Right.
considered solid waste.
Yeah,
so
and then it decides to rain, okay? That water's moving, it's going to the storm drain, okay, and it's going somewhere, right? And so, you know, in Hawaii, when we picked up cardboard and aluminum cans, you need a solid waste permit. So that's something to look into. There may be others, but the point is there's a bunch. I know I'm going fast through this, but I've got a bunch more slides and want to try to hit them all. Technology choices. So I want to make biodiesel. Should I heat plastic tanks? Should I? No, choices are based on a lot of factors, okay? Economic. What does it cost? How much money do you have? Availability. You know, what's around you, okay? So I really love listening to Terry speak from the St. Louis Club, because, and Maud, I guess even more so, but both you ladies, because, and we got this out of the dumpster, and then we found this, and we put together this thin film, or falling film evaporator that's pretty cool. So look around you, but you may not be able to get all the things you want. Some things are cheaper than others in areas. Environmental issues are going to affect your technology choices. If we wanted to build a 10 million gallon a year biodiesel plant in Colorado, which we were considering, the owners of the company I worked for last November, and we were looking at Windsor out somewhere near the ethanol plant. What I heard today, I lived in Colorado for 20 years, so I kind of know it's pretty dry here, and I kind of know it's been really dry lately in the last decade. I don't know that we had to water 10 million gallons of water, right? So I do know Biodiesel Industries has broken ground for a plant in Detroit, and we are and fortunately there's riparian rights there, waterside rights, but nevertheless, 10 million gallons is a lot of water. And even getting the ability to deliver it to your location is one thing on the supply side. Then you have the whole wastewater disposal side. So again, disposal, not the right word, is it? Okay, thank you. And so, you know, you might want to go to Amberlight or something else in places where there's not a lot of water. So you've got to take these things into account. Complexity is a big one. If you can't manage it, fix it, troubleshoot it yourself, or know someone who can for what you can afford to pay, don't buy it. Because that capital asset will become a huge liability faster than you know. Me and the GC came to terms with that. Okay, $600 to get a technician out, that's the minimum, that's 4 hours of a GC tech's time. When I have money to spend as a small biodiesel producer, guess what I buy first? Stuff, not materials, but pumps and hoses, man. Cam locks, right? Cam locks, hoses, particularly, because they're rare items, okay? So your complexity needs to be something you can manage. When you start putting a lot of controls, particularly if you use PLCs in anything you do, programmable logic controllers, if you can't do coding, don't go buy that thing from, you know, PLCs Are Us, because I guarantee you the guy who coded it will move out of state, you know, move out of country, something will happen, and that PLC won't be anything good for you. It's a point that Frankie helped me make yesterday. There's lots of ways to make ASTM quality biodiesel. You can do it in stainless steel tanks, you can do it in paddle mixing, pump mixing, you can do it in a fuel meister, guaranteed. I've seen it, okay? So the equipment affects how you make the fuel, okay, you can do it in a Pepsi bottle. Because if you react well in a Pepsi bottle and wash it, I mean, Rachel, we could make ASTM quality fuel, right? I mean, let it dry, open it up, let the water go off, can, in a Pepsi bottle, okay? So when people say, I've got this patented technology, it's really special, open your eyes really big, because it should be pretty transparent. The magic, right, the biodiesel business isn't about the technology choice. It's about contribution margin per gallon at the bottom line, how much you can stop, and your overhead. Different reaction technologies. You know, the recipe is one thing. You know, what kind of feedstock you're going to use? What kind of FFA will you go up to? Steve, what I heard you say last year at this conference was, you know, beggars can't be choosers in Iowa. Okay? What I heard Frankie say was, ooh, I'm not taking that stuff. You're both making good fuel. You know, you're in a college town. He's next to DC. You know, how many restaurants are there? Can he pick and choose? Yes. So, feedstock choices, KOH or sodium is a choice, methylates, doing acid catalysis. Anybody here know of anyone doing acid catalysis, which is the pre-treatment of high FFA oil on a commercial basis?
Our producer
Okay.
doesn't. I don't think he understands it.
Yeah, okay. And the reason I bring this up is we've all heard it. Oh, do commercial producers do this? Yes. I don't happen to know any, but there are ones who are doing it. But the point of it is that, you know, it's very viable. What I've seen so far for the small producers I work for is because of the length of time of that reaction, because of the water that's created, it's more hassle than we want to deal with, and so we don't. And so we try to find ways to make our break-even work without a whole bunch of equipment, more acid, and more dwell times in tanks. Your process, there's variables. You know, we do batch or continuous or some mix in between. I'm continuous here and I'm batch in my recovery maybe. Your heat source, is it solar? Is it, you know, if you're in Colorado, you know, solar's a nice choice. Over 300 days of sunshine here. And I see places say that, and there's places like Hawaii where it's cloudy and sunny all day, off and on. And it's 300 days of sunshine if you say, did the sun shine today? In Colorado, it's real sunshine, right? So your heat source, whether it's boiler, whether it's sun, whether it's biodiesel, whether it's, again, lots of ways to do. You're going to have to figure out what's going to make sense based on economic and availability issues in your area. Mixing, I've seen paddle mixing, pump mixing. I guess those are the two big choices that I'm sort of aware of. They both work. They both have their benefits and drawbacks. Paddles tend to rattle apart, fall apart, and be hard on bearings unless they're designed really well, and then it's mechanical. Pumps, at least in my experience, create shear that's really nice when you're reacting, the shear force of the pump, but you transfer any sort of wet fuel before you head soap out of that reaction, and you've got mayonnaise. I mean, you've got a high shear pump. Literally, an emulsion that I set one on a shelf, and 3 months later, mayonnaise. Well, I mean, that's what mayonnaise is. It's oil and water and an emulsifier, right? Separation, you know, gravity, centrifuges, I guess are the two big ones there. My personal experience with centrifuges is not very good. Gravity is always there. You know what I mean? And so centrifuges, and I heard somebody else say this in one of the presentations this weekend, you need a babysitter. We had 2 units, 50 grand a pop, actually a little more than that, sequential serial numbers off the production line, okay? So 1,268 and 1,269. This one required very little babysitting. Babysitting meaning varying the hertz, the speed that it's spinning, changing the weir plate, which is the mechanical thing that goes in that decides how much cut you're making in that spinning cylinder. This one was great. This one sucked. So there's a guy sitting up there with a gate valve, okay, feeding the centrifuge, you know. So they work, okay, but just be aware, it's a capital, you're going to spend a lot of money capital-wise and do the analysis to say, you will get better yield with a centrifuge. You'll send a lot less ester out with your glycerin. In commercial operations, if we settled for an hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that, we can end up, if we're not careful, with 10% ester in our glycerin stream. Okay? That's money right out with the glycerin. Okay? And again, that's not unusual. Washing. Something I've learned the hard way is, and again, it's the same with the apple seed, but some people wash in the same, nobody washes in the apple seed, do they? No. Drum to the side. Okay. But there are systems where you can wash in the same tank you react in. And when you have space constraints, so some of this molecular technology, people do this. Well, it takes a whole lot longer to wash than it does to react, right? So washing in wash tanks, not reactors, is a good idea. The continuous wash is something that I have not had the pleasure of being able to do in a commercial size, but this is continually feeding water in and using standpipes. So some of you probably are doing that with your homebrew stuff. Yeah, somebody? Graydon? Somebody? Yeah, okay. So we were headed that way in Berthoud and didn't get there. Mist washing, I think most of us do in some way, shape, or form. Bubbling, again, we do it just like you do. Actually, in Denton right now we don't. In Berthoud we didn't. You guys do, Piedmont, right? I'm a believer in it. It'll reduce the amount of water. I mean, some of you had that experience as well. So after you mist wash, right, so you don't make emulsions, you're going to get a lot more action of getting soaps out and for less water if you put the water back up again and let it fall down, right? Agitation, so some of you are doing the 5% pre-wash and agitating at the Harbor Freight pump, right? Again, I think I mentioned in one of my presentations, when we do that, we make miracle with it, okay? Again, depending on what pump you have, makes sense. Ion exchange resins, or molecular sieves. I think the Magnusol is really more of a molecular sieve, but it does have some adsorption in addition to absorption properties. So being a little bit polar, I think, might make some sense. We're heading this direction. Most small producers are heading this direction, okay? For all the reasons you heard about from the first two speakers, okay? I think personally, I'd like to be a commercial producer using the gram planning method. So I want to do sort of what Terry and Dave and Maud are talking about, and get the methanol out and see how we can get soap to drop out. Because apparently that's working. I'm not aware of any commercial producers that are doing it. Drying, flash evaporation. So what I learned by Wikipediaing evaporation this morning, because I was a bit confused about the difference between evaporation and distillation, and what I read on Wikipedia this morning was evaporation is going from a liquid to a gas below the boiling point of that material. And it happens because of the kinetics in the liquid, so depending on what the substance is, molecules are bouncing around doing a happy thing, kind of like Graydon and I, and if I'm happy to be bouncing this way and Graydon bounces that way and he pushes me up into the air, that's evaporation, okay? But it's below the boiling point of the material, and distillation is above the boiling point of the material. So really, I think, Terry, what you're doing is, and I think maybe you're saying it's distillation, right? The falling film thing? Because you're above the boiling point of ethanol. Flash evaporation is when you're sending, and it's done with wet oils, vegetable oils, this sort of thing. You're basically sending a stream in, it's boiling water in this case, and you're sending it into a vessel that has lower pressure, or through a constriction. So basically what's happening is that it's kicking up, the lower pressure is letting, and again, this is some of that chemistry magic, but it's basically kicking off molecules and evaporating them, not distilling them. Bubble drying is magic. We did do this in a 5,400 gallon tank at Rocky Mountain Biodiesel. We washed it and bubbled it, and you guys are doing it. There's some art, okay? One of the best things I did was I had an IBC, and like Frankie, I learned about sawzalls, and I cut open the tops, and I got 4 bubbling blocks from Graydon, put them in the corners. I bought 2 pumps, the aquarium pumps, and put in 250 gallons of fuel, orange juice, wet, bubbled it overnight. Crystal. I could see right to the bottom of the tote and see, that's, I don't know, 3.5 feet of fuel right through it. So, for those co-ops, to me, the bubbling and doing it in IBC, and I think Denver Biodiesel was doing something real similar to this. Again, many of you, I think, are magic. In Colorado, where we have low ambient humidities, works real well. Probably a little more challenging in Denton this year. Spray drying, you guys are familiar with that. Thin film evaporation, which the difference between that and flash is no reduction in pressure, and no vacuum. Salt towers, works. Still passed the sodium test on ASTM. Petroleum people have been doing it for years. I'm not a big fan of it because you got to do something with the salt water. And I try to, the more we can minimize side streams, the better, waste streams, the better off we are. polishing and storage.
Oh, grass.
There's no way. I'm probably gonna get, so all of you, whoever wants to go to lunch, please do. I won't be offended, but I'm gonna stay and finish it. Polishing and storage. Basically, it's about filtering the finished fuel. Maintaining your quality all the way through delivery. The things that can get you, condensation. So if you put a tank out in the sun, particularly if it's not, even if it's solid, but if, even worse, if it lets light get into it, you get diurnal temperature changes. In Colorado, they're powerful, right? This time of year, we could be 57 in the morning and 98 this afternoon. And so you heat up the fuel. There's not much water here, so that helps. But in Hawaii, where we had some pretty good diurnal temperature changes as well, you heat up the fuel, it'll suck in the moisture of the air during the day. It cools off at night. I lived up country on Maui in Makawao. We get down to, you know, it's actually sort of similar to here, not quite as hot during the day. And it's a pump. Because the water that got sucked in, when the temperature drops, the ability of that biodiesel to hold the water is decreased. And so it a little bit drops out. So I saw tows, IBCs in Hawaii that had been out with biodiesel for you know, 3 or 4 months with fuel that I knew what it looked like when I delivered it, okay, with, you know, half an inch of water on the bottom, and it wasn't rain. So condensation, be aware of that. Bacteria, yes?
What color does paint for a tank? Lighter, darker? Do you want the heat in, or do you not want the heat in?
You don't want the heat in. So in my experience, you want to keep the ambient temperature. You don't want this, okay? You want this, okay? And so reducing the temperature changes on the tank is important. So if you have to have it outside, put it in the shade, okay? Insulate it, put straw bales around it, because even in the summer, right? I mean, you want to keep it steady, and you want to keep it 10 degrees above the cloud point at a minimum, okay?
And these totes you were talking about are sealed?
Yes. No. They were not sealed. The ones that where exactly is a pump? No.
So if we keep it sealed with the desiccant from the input and all that stuff?
Yeah. You know, and that would be something. Talk to Rachel. Sorry, after this, and ask her about experiences with tanks out in the world, because you know, in terms of storage of biodiesel, I know what happens with ISO tankers of 6,500 gallons, but that's a different thing. The other thing is desiccants, of course, get wet, and then you can recharge them, but if you don't, it's not a desiccant anymore. So the biggest thing, though, Jason, is periodically test. So go crack the bottom, okay, and see what you get. And if you're not having a problem, don't fix it. If you're having a problem, you know, fix it, right? But so testing it and see how it goes.
Directly out of the rig.
So I'll talk to you about that offline. I have mixed thoughts about it. I think pumping off the bottom makes a lot of sense. And then in some ways, I think it makes no sense. It's all about tank maintenance, okay? And it's about how much water's in your fuel, and so there's a few things that can happen there. Dreaded white stuff, I'm going to into that again. This is a big one. Avoid cross-contamination in pumps and hoses. So I'm pumping vegetable oil in my plant, and then I swap the hose and I'm pumping biodiesel out. You know, triglycerides go, woo. It doesn't take much. Because again, 0.240% is the spec, so you just can't. Don't use hoses for biodiesel that you use for oil. You can in homebrew land, don't do it commercially, okay? Pumps as well, you know? The pump only holds, there's only gonna be like a quart or two in there. We worked so hard to make this fuel, don't even talk that way, is what I say to people. Don't even talk that way. Because the fuel doesn't get better once it leaves your plant. It just can't get better. It's only gonna get worse. And so, you know, those of you who have bought fuel for me, Steve and Lawrence and John and Tom Judge, you know, they know it's like I'm hovering over this thing, looking, well, there's stuff at the bottom, I want it out. It doesn't get better. Maintaining appropriate storage temperature. So again, you know, avoiding ups and downs is important. Some tank considerations to think about. Size the tanks based on your volume plans, okay? I'm going to make 10 million gallons 10 years from now. Well, you know, I should do the math on this, but probably I shouldn't size my plant at 10 million gallons if it's going to be 10 years. Okay? But if I want to get to 1 million gallons in 18 months, I better darn well size it for 1 million gallons. Because I don't want to be in the middle of production, ramping up, and then have to go put in tanks and replumb and all of that. Okay? So it goes back to what your goals were when you sized your business at the beginning. But incoming feedstock, you know, if it snows where you live, it did where I lived this winter in Berthoud, Colorado. A few days before Christmas, we got 24 to 30 inches. Trucks didn't run so well for a week, did they? For those of you who don't live here, you might remember that 4,000 people or so stranded at DIA for 3 or 4 days. It was like our own, I'm not going to say that. So you need to have, how many days supply do you want inbound, right? If the poop hits the fan, do you want 3 days worth of feedstock? Is that enough? 7 days, 14 days? What I want is a minimum of 14 days, okay? What the finance people I work with say is, no, Bob. How much is that going to cost? Well, how many customers do you want? How many times do you think you can run a distributor out of fuel and still have that customer? The answer is somewhere between 1 and 0, okay? So, and it's on the outbound side as well, okay? So when you're selling fuel, if you're undersized, you're hustling all the time. You have no finished goods, you have no stock. If you ever get caught in the situation where you're trying to drive fuel while a tanker's waiting, it doesn't feel good. It just doesn't feel good, period. Okay, in-process tanks, sort of the same. You need to think about sizing. You need to think about material compatibility issues. Not all steel is created equal. Has anyone here had an issue with rusting on the inside of a steel drum? No, I have. And so if you ever see some fine powdery red stuff, sort of orangey looking, a little lighter than you might think the rest looks like, take a magnet, put it underneath, and if it moves to the magnet, that's what you got, okay? I've seen it in a couple of tanks in Hawaii. Not all steel drums are created equal, okay? And so just keep your eyes open on that. If that's what you can afford right now, keep your eyes open on that. Do some testing, look at the bottom, see what you see. Always pull a little bit of fuel out every day, look at it. Every time when I made a delivery, had a delivery coming, a truck to load, I pulled fuel before that trucker left wherever his base yard was. So if I knew there was a delivery this morning at 10 a.m., and I knew it took them generally 45 minutes to get there, an hour and a half before he was coming, I'm pulling fuel off that tank that's been sitting there for 3 or 4 days, because I want to see it before he's there and it's going into his truck. If I've got any issues with the precipitator or anything, right? So anyway, be aware of material compatibility issues throughout your process. Understand where you need heated tanks and where you don't. If you're trying to move sodium-based glycerin in Colorado in the wintertime, you need a heated tank, okay? We were sending it off to compost here at Berthoud. It was going out through A1 Organics, thank you. They do all the beer waste and soda pop and milk and all kinds of fun stuff. And when those guys, when truckers go and unload the truck, they want it to just go woo. So they made a pit just like you did at the compost place, a 6,500-gallon tanker. You want to be able to open that valve and have that stuff just flow. So we loaded them at about 135 Fahrenheit, okay? Because when it's cold, you don't want that stuff to be clinging to the inside of his tank, because when he goes to pick up his next load, if he's got 6 inches of this somehow, because his tank's cold when he gets there, okay? We wanted it hot because we wanted a happy trucker. They don't like to sit around. Okay, I said that. Feedstocks, at least 1 week supply. Like I say, I want 2, but finance people never let me get away with that much. Pump considerations, just know this. There are different types of pumps that are suited for different applications. You've got your trash pumps. You can pump a rag through them. I wouldn't have suggested, but it happens, doesn't it? Okay. You got your diaphragm pumps. I had not worked with one of those until Denton, and I've become a believer. We have a double diaphragm pump that is made for emptying heads on boats. Okay. And it will do about 30 to 40 gallons a minute. The 2-inch stinger, pretty cool. You put something kind of hard through there, or some of those frozen chunks of oil, those diaphragms don't like that much, okay? So peristaltic pumps, I haven't worked with these, but it's similar to a diaphragm. It's a rubber sort of thing, like a U, and there's rollers that squeeze it. So I understand these things would pump hard-boiled eggs with the shells off. Centrifugal pumps, yeah, Cuisinarts, high shear in the pump.
But that's what a trash pump is.
Yes, that's right. So the difference, trash pumps are centrifugal pumps. The difference typically with a trash pump is there's a lot more clearance between the volute, which is the out piece, and the impeller, which is here. And so you can let a rag go through between the spinning piece. Other centrifugal pumps, because it just means there's something, impeller that's spinning inside basically, can have very tight tolerances. Can create nice shear for your reaction. Typically they're not very good at being self-priming, as trash pumps typically aren't either. I mean, they'll do okay. You could pump, I don't know, I pumped 3 or 4 feet, I guess, high with a 2-inch trash pump with vegetable oil. And I pumped it up then to the top of the tanker. Vane pumps, so both vane pumps and gear pumps are positive displacement. That means what goes in will go out. The corollary is what goes out must go in. So these create suction. Don't put your hand over the inlet of a vane pump to see if it's on, because, you know, yeah, just turn it off! Don't do that. That's not experience-based. That's, you know, common sense-based. So vane pumps basically have vanes that, some of them have sliding vanes that slide out. You've got this spinning wheel, and the vane slides out and contacts the outside here, and you're pushing material out, you know, sucking it in and pushing it out. Gear pumps are kind of similar. Two gears, there's kind of spaces between them. Okay? Again, positive displacement pumps. What I really like about those is they are self-priming. And for people who have digged around with priming pumps, it's never fun. And so just understand, in our plant in Denton, we have a trash pump, gas-fired. We've got a couple of them. We've got a diaphragm pump that we use. We use this for when it floods, among other things. It's kind of a backup. We've had a lot of rain in Denton this year. We tried to send some this way. We're using diaphragm pumps on our collection truck currently. We're using centrifugal pumps for pump mixing in our reactors and methanol methoxide mix tank. We're using vane pumps for product shipment. It's, I think, a beneficial use in the sense that it's going into supplanting some of the natural gas that would otherwise be used. But you have to do it correctly, okay? The reaction desires, I had the word requires. I changed it because in a homebrew way, you certainly don't need to be anhydrous without water, but it's better when you are. So being able to get it on a commercial scale, you really need to get 99.5% or better anhydrous methanol out of your recovery. It is environmentally and financially compelling, particularly when methanol went up last fall. You know, it'll pay back the equipment pretty quick, even if it's pretty expensive, based on your volumes. So kind of methods, I'm just going to hit these real quickly. Simple distillation is the pot still. So you're cooking something, you're distilling something off, you're condensing it, okay? Like Granddad Still. Vacuum distillation basically is using lower than ambient pressure. We do this if we have a high boiling point material, okay? So we don't want to heat it all the way up to 800, okay? So if we reduce the pressure, we reduce the boiling point. Fractional distillation is using a fractionated column, usually involving packing, so that as the vapors are rising, they're starting to condense on this packing. And what can happen there is that as they condense, let's say that the methanol that's condensing, let's say, is 90% pure, okay, and 10% water, let's say. As it gets up there at that point, because of that sort of magic thing that happens in fractionating columns, the material that's coming back down, the stuff that's coming up behind it will actually then flash some of that off again. So you get these plates, theoretical plates that happens. Go look at it on Wiki, it's pretty cool. Where basically you're getting higher and higher levels because you're getting this sort of effect going up the column. And it's, you know, it's how controlling the gasoline is cracked. Reflux basically means reintroducing the overhead liquid, the lighter phase, back into the column. So it's 92% pure, we put it back in, we'll get some more of that water out. Flash evaporation, as I said earlier, at least in my understanding, isn't really distillation, it's vaporization below the boiling point due to a reduction in pressure. So distillation costs a lot of money on commercial scales. You need a lot of heat because a phase change, meaning from liquid to gas in this case, requires a lot of energy. So we're looking at buying a hot oil boiler, or it's called a hot oil heater. It's a boiler that, rather than having water in the loop, has oil. You heat it a lot hotter, so you can make this, the temperature's a lot higher. May include vacuum equipment as well. Generally on commercial scales, to go buy this equipment that works, that gets us methanol and the qualities we need, you're looking at $500,000 to $800,000 starting. Okay, so it's big, but it'll pay itself back. Okay, so side stream management. So the difference between this, at least in my verbiage, a waste stream means I'm paying to get rid of it. When you're dealing with hazardous waste, okay, meaning it has a negative economic value, there's lots of regulations, as well there should be, on the chain of custody of that material to make sure that, hey Frankie, man, I'll take your hazardous waste. You go, cool, Bob. You're half the price of the other guys. And I go, yeah, cool, thanks. And so I take it here and I go dump it in the ditch, right? So when it has negative economic value, regulatory agencies who are protecting us from this stuff are basically wanting to know where it goes. A side stream, in my verbiage these days, is something that's at marginal economic value. It's sort of a wash. A co-product means you're paying me for it. We all want glycerin to go from here to there, right? Right now, in Texas for us right now, it's here. So currently we're taking our wash water and our glycerin, not demethanol, although we expect to be putting in methanol recovery this year, that's a high ticket item, because of the financial aspect of it more than anything. And we're sending all that off to the digesters together, and they really do like it. They're paying the trucking, and it's moving, I don't know, 100 and some miles, something like that. It's in Stevensville.
Yeah, our stuff goes there.
Yeah.
Good people.
And they're doing it with, it's a company called Microgy. They're doing cattle manure. So instead of putting it in big lagoons, they're putting it in big tanks. And they're adding our stuff, and they like it because it's hot, so to speak. It'll get that thing going. And as I understand it, yeah, and make methane and feed that. They're feeding it back to the pipeline.
Yeah, they're making money.
And it's coming back to my house, and let me fry up my tofu. Glycerin can be refined in crude or pharmaceutical grades. The big plants do this. I have not worked with one who does. It's expensive again to get the glycerin to those levels. If you do it WBO, you're not going to get a kosher label ever, which is sort of important if you're trying to get it into some markets. The potential uses, is fuel, so cement kilns, and this is being done. Animal feed. Somebody mentioned at one of the presentations that waste vegetable oil isn't a food for competition with food. It's not really true because it is in competition because most waste vegetable oil, a lot of it goes to feeding cattle, pigs, turkeys. Okay, so absolutely the price of meats will go up as the price of their feeds go up, which is happening, both because of what's going on with soy and corn and WBO. Okay, so we like to think, I hear people go, well, waste vegetable is a waste product. Not. Okay, and hasn't been for years. And I think it was Nathaniel who was pointing out, and just like that, the rendering industry's been around for 100 years, right? More. Yes, Steve?
We're getting 26 cents a pound.
Yeah, WBO right now, right? So, and it is tied to food. Yes, sir.
I was going to point out one thing I've learned is that a lot of WBO is used to make the trash that they feed these animals at the factory farms digestible so that they can feed them things like chicken feathers or corn husks.
Yeah, chicken feathers, it's true.
It's so
we had this advertising campaign that I tried with the interns we had the other day that are working with us from UNC to go out and for a sales pitch for getting waste vegetable oil away from the renderers out of restaurants. And my idea was, we're just brainstorming right in the conference room, let's come up with ideas. And I said, you know how the Chick-fil-A people, they've got the cows saying, eat more chicken? Is that how? Yeah. Okay. So my thought was, having cows saying, grass, not grease. Grass, not grease. We want to eat grass, not grease. Right? So, I don't know. Feel free to use it. Because cows aren't made to eat oil or chicken feathers or all the things we feed them. They're just not. Wash water. Yes, about 1 gallon generated per gallon of biodiesel produced. And Van Gerpen says it, and I believe, and it's our experience as well. Can be less, can be more. Depends on your feedstock. Depends on how well you converted. Depends on what your goals are in terms of soap removal, stuff like that. Yes, high in BOD. In order to send our wash water to the city of Denton, which we do not do, I think we got quoted $75 grand a month based on the BOD that they could take. We can't. We'd like to help the city of Denton that way with that money, but we don't have it. It was a bunch because the BOD is just that high, and it's a lot of material. Spent ion exchange resins. Is anybody here using them in their home process or know of a commercial producer who is? So.
About
Amberlite or Magnasol?
Yeah.
Okay, so Grayton, are you using it at home or
No, I know the producers in New Mexico and having great success with it, but they still have to landfill it.
Okay.
Get rid of it.
And what about, where does the Magnasol, when you're aware of, go?
Not sure.
Okay, so
Just started using
so we're looking down this road here as a firm. I don't like it. I drove a recycling truck for 2 years. We were the defenders of the landfill. Okay, keep out of landfill. Right? Find other places for these things to go. So, it's a mixed bag.
I heard a recent rumor from a commercial producer who has switched from Magnusol to a more amber-like pure-like thing, that they saw their oxidative stability go out of spec on Magnusol.
Using Magnusol went out of spec? Or Amberlite?
Magnusol.
Magnusol, okay.
And I would also offer that when using Amberlite, this producer is also struggling with gas.
Okay, interesting. So there's a company called Lanxess that I mentioned the other day, or Lanxess, that we're looking into. You know, more work is needed down there. And again, as commercial producers, we don't want to change our process unless we have to. And when we have to, we want to do it really carefully. We want to test it in parallel, and then you can really only do it in smaller sizes, right? You can't go through your big process, but until you go through your big process, just because it works in a lab doesn't mean it's going to work on a big scale. And then there's the whole economic thing. So you really have to model this stuff up front. So get this line up before you start generating. Some of you visited me at the Rocky Mountain Biodiesel might have seen a frac tank. Frac tank is used for water. It goes out in, I guess, oil and gas industry. It holds about 22,000 gallons. The guy who started it prior to Biodiesel Industries' involvement, he had not lined up what he was going to do with his glycerin. So when I started with him in September, he goes, well, we're just going to put it in a frac tank. So we hired a frac tank, rented one for $1,000 a month, and filled it up with glycerin in September in Colorado. And as he's doing this, I said, you know, one, how many weeks worth of supply of glycerin production is that? It was about 4. And 2, you're going to have a glycerin sickle that you're going to be paying $1,000 a month rent on until June. And he said, oh, Bob. And I said, you know, I'm an employee, it's your money. But that's just asinine. And in January, this was of '06, we had a very warm winter, the one before last. I was in that frac tank, okay, we were doing 3-hour stints. I had waders, okay. We were able to pump off a bunch of it. Then it was about this deep. And frac tanks are about from here to that wall, and about that tall, and about, you know, this wide. It's a big thing. Inside that tank with a hot seat, okay, with a pump on the outside, breaking this stuff up and feeding it down there. And it took us 2.5 days to empty it. But yeah, it's just one of those that figure it out up front. You know, once you get it, if you think I can just start producing, I'll figure it out. That's a bad mistake. Facility considerations, zoning and permitting. Again, if you try to zone next to a church, it's hard. Any public space, Steve?
Zoning in Denver is problematic.
Yes.
And that's where it's saying that you must not drive.
Yes, it is everywhere. Okay, I'm going to move on, sorry. Power, make sure you have enough power wherever it is you're going to go. Water, you heard it today if you're in Colorado and LA and a lot of other places. 1/3 of the people on this planet do not have adequate access to fresh water every day. Okay? How many of you were shocked with what the average use of a single family home was on a daily basis? I mean, yeah, okay? That's us. We're those statistics. Containment, fire building codes, I guess I better say it here. We'll define some of this. There's the IBC, International Building Code. UBC is similar, Universal Building Code, or uniform maybe. Beautiful. Thank you. Fire codes, similarly, you can find these typically in your library. Containing 120% of your largest tank is sort of the rule. Look it up. Fire suppression can be very expensive. If you need, it's based on square footage and sprinkler flow rates. If you don't have the supply in your town, okay, fast enough out of the hydrant, then you need to put in a tank, okay, that holds water and can guarantee that fire flow for, I think it's 20 minutes. So again, up front, you know, this could easily cost $40,000 to $80,000 for a not very large facility. So you need to look into this stuff. These are requirements by law and by common sense too. Ventilation also required. If you have open systems at all in storage areas for methanol on a commercial basis, you must exchange I might be wrong on this. It's about 1 cubic foot per minute per square foot of floor space. It's a bunch. Okay? And if you're in Colorado and it's wintertime, it's 10 degrees, and you're exchanging 1 cubic foot per square foot of floor space, you know, it gets cold right quick. So you need to condition that area. Okay? Again, these are costs. You need to think about truck access. I've seen a biodiesel plant that, I've seen some of the worst locations, and Berthoud was one. If trucks can't get in and out easily, it just sucks for them and you. You need to consider maintenance on your facility sort of in general. What was I thinking of here? I don't know. Quality assurance, we talked about it a bunch here at this conference. Bad fuel is bad for business. in-house versus third-party testing. Some level of both, I think, is required. You know, you need to be able to titrate in-house. That's easy. You don't need a GC in-house. That period. So budget accordingly. Used to be some talk about big five. What are the things we test? And Rachel, you kind of hit on this, but typically it's things like free and total glycerin, water and sediment, cloud point, flash point, and sulfur. The first three are bad for vehicles quicker than anything else. They're also the ones that typically fuel will fail for. Again, I've never seen a carbon strip test fail either. Flash point, you know, is more of a safety and handling issue. Sulfur is a regulatory issue. There are large, sorry?
I was just saying acid, I would go acid.
And it's one of the big five, and we do test for that as well. We haven't had problems there. Knock on wood. Sulfur, there's big fines if we're selling fuel that's over 15 parts per million, period. And in my experience with waste vegetable oil and poultry fat, you're looking at 6 to 12 parts per million of sulfur. So what I've read, that biodiesel has no sulfur. Okay, I've sent out lots of samples. This is what I'm saying. What do you test that sort of, Rachel?
Somewhere between 9 and 11, if I'm nice.
So maybe we don't know. Maybe everything we've read that biodiesel has no sulfur is true, but I'm thinking feedstocks have sulfur. Absolutely, that's it. But so the thing is, that's it. Feedstocks have sulfur. Period. Okay. So manage it. It's not a big deal. I've got about maybe 5 slides left. Strategic planning. This is a good tool. This is another one of those business tools I learned back in school that I've used over and over and over and over in my life. It's how I got to be a jungle guide in Belize with my life partner, advice partner, Camille. This is strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of your business. And this is the case analysis we're going to look at. We're going to look at a quick page on each regarding Rocky Mountain Biodiesel. Long-range financial planning, doing an annual budget process based on those tools that we talked about earlier, doing a 3-year forecast. We used to talk about 5-year forecasts. If you can get an American business or any business to do an annual forecast, you're ahead of most. They're basically quarterly based. Set goals. This is another tool I learned back in school. It was Drucker, I think, back in the 50s who came up with this. It's gotten some bad press out in the workforce, management by objectives. I don't really see why. You know, if our goals are to be here, Frankie, this morning at 8 o'clock, you've asked me to be here at 8. I agree that I want to be here at 8, okay? Because we have something we're going to do that's important together. It's measurable, right? We said 8, quantifiable. It's not like, hey, see you in the morning at 8. It's mutually agreed upon. How about 8:15? Great, 8:15. Okay, mutually agreed upon, and then periodically reviewed. So, not so much in this example that I'm using, but you're always on time, and I really like that about you. Okay, and actually about Lawrence, that was true. When he was going to come and get fuel, you know, we're stopping what we're doing, and we're going to be ready for him to have all the hoses and everything hooked up. So when Lawrence gets there, I can get him fuel, or Luis, or Steve, right? And so, Steve, you know, I was a Nazi this way, wasn't I?
You bet.
If you say you're coming at 9, damn it. If you're not here at 9, you call me.
That's right.
Because, you know, I can go do something else. But if I sit around here and wait, and then you should, and I'm not picking on you, Steve, because he didn't do this to me. But, you know, come back tomorrow.
But I called.
Yes, oh, he did, yeah. So that example was not about Steve. But it's just, so I don't know why I got on that tangent.
I do.
Okay, maybe he did have some less. So this is what a SWOT analysis can look like. And you can do this in your life, okay? So if you're looking at goals and what you want to achieve. So when I looked at some of the strengths of our firm, and some of this is true and some of this is sort of hypothetical, but it's like this, okay? We had customers who wanted 40,000 gallons a month. That's a strength, okay? What else was going in our favor? A huge market potential for increased sales. I mean, if the price of diesel and biodiesel are in a good place, you know, hell, there's 40 billion gallons a year demand. Okay? That's a strength of being in the biodiesel industry. We had production competence. At least we thought we did, and our customers seem to agree with that most of the time. I say that actually, hopefully more than most of the time. We had initially some oil industry experience. This helped with the whole distribution piece, understanding transports and pumps and tanks and all of that stuff. That's helpful. We had affiliation with some other plants, and we still do. It may be a formal affiliation where we had a sister plant in Denton, the one I'm at now. It may be an informal affiliation. Rachel and I, Leaf and I, Lyle and I share stuff. And a lot of us do that in commercial biodiesel. When I talk to people who don't, they go, well, Bob, I don't think I can really tell you that. That's fine, I totally understand. It's my loss and it's theirs. We've helped each other a bunch, and we're not going to start selling fuel in Montpure or anywhere actually east of the Mississippi or anywhere east of East Texas. Okay, so that was a strength. Flip side of strengths or weaknesses. Ouch. When cash flow is anemic, it's hard. It's hard because a pump goes down. Pumps can be expensive. The GC goes down. That can be expensive. It's a weakness because it doesn't put you in a position where you can react to stuff happens. Okay. And when you do a SWOT analysis, again, this is the thing you should sit in a room. All thoughts should come out. Okay. All thoughts should come out. This is something you do behind closed doors. Generally you don't share it with the world, but the ones I put on here were true for us, and they're true for most commercial producers right now. Yeah, too many things to do, not enough time. Is that true about you guys?
Never, never.
Ever, okay? It's always true.
Oh, God, yeah.
Focus. One of the big things I've learned experientially in business is there's tons of great things. We can do NHL. Focus. Pick what you want to do and go do that. And when you're doing that, you got that thing just running for a year. And I'm an operations guy, so I'm going to say a year, 2 years. Then start thinking about doing something else. Okay? Because it's like doing this. No. Yeah, I can't. Your site, or ours in this case, may not be suited for high volume production. So one of the people above me said, "Hey Bob, could we do 10 million gallons a year in Berthoud at the plant?" I said, "What?" Get out your calculator and let's do the math. That's 83,000 gallons of fuel outbound per month. No, that's 830,000 gallons of fuel outbound per month. Okay. As you run, how many trucks in is that? More. And there's glycerin, right? And you do that math, it was like 16 trucks a day. For those of you who visited our site in Berthoud, no, okay? No. Did you have rail? Yeah, but no spur. I mean, we saw the train go by. But, again, rail, now all of a sudden, not on that line particularly, but that's where AGP's fuel's moving. Is that, we're going to go compete with them on price right now? I'm thinking not so much so. I'd like to, but not the reality of it. Our relationship in the local community was strained. You dump glycerin down the municipal wastewater system and not tell anybody, you're not going to make a lot of friends. You pitch the fire marshal out when he comes over to your plant and then call the mayor and complain, you're not going to make a lot of friends. So again, the guy who started the plant did that before Biodiesel Industries got involved in it. When I moved to town, I walked over, I happened to live right across the street from town hall, and I walked over and I said, "Hi, I'm Bob, I'm at the biodiesel plant." They said, "We're glad you're here, Bob," because they had pitchforks and lanterns, and they were putting their legal ducks in a row to come and stop us, okay? And I felt really bad about that, because the town of Berthoud has lots of things they can spend money on, and I'm really sad that they spent some of their money putting together legal proceedings when if the work had been done appropriately up front, it would not have happened. Okay, it was a total waste of money. The lawyers were happy, so I guess not a total waste. Shoes for the kids. But it was a weakness, okay? And not just with the legal part of Berthoud, but just in town in general. You want to be a good community citizen, period. I lived there. I walked around there, my wife did, we knew people there. It's like, I didn't want people to say, "Did you hear who slammed the wastewater treatment plant?" Tony Huerta, who's the wastewater director for town of Berthoud, the first time he met me, he was like this. And as I talked with him for a few minutes, it was all good because I wasn't the guy he thought I was. Opportunities are things like vertically integrate the business. Hey, what if we collected our own fuel and stopped paying Darling? That might make sense or not. We had an opportunity to greatly increase our production sales, so how do you go about doing that? So as you identify some opportunities, then you start drilling down and saying, so what do I do about it? How much is that going to cost? How quickly? How much brain time is that going to take? We had an opportunity to promote ourselves as a quality regional producer. One of the biggest keys to this was Denver Biodiesel and Boulder Biodiesel. And you guys, truly one of the biggest keys of this, because you guys are true believers. You went out in the community, those of you who were my customers or bought from those co-ops who we were selling to, and said good things about us. And I heard them, and thank you. Thank you. Steve, Luis, Lawrence, Jeff, Sam, you guys who are our customers, you know, again, goosebumps, but it was just good. And that feels so much better than Tony Wirtz just looking at me like this, okay? So huge. We definitely had an opportunity to enhance the relationship between us and the local community, and we did. And when we left, they were not happy to see us go. When I pointed out that we employed 2, and we actually didn't pay any sales tax because, well, we did, but to the state of Colorado, a little piece of that gets diverted. They didn't feel quite as bad. But they were very, very good people, good to work with. And so even though we had, you know, peed in the post toasties up front as a business, they were very happy to let us back in. And that's my other advice to you. If you step in poop and you go, it smells, or even worse, somebody goes, you know, ew, you know, instead of going, hey, hey, and trying to push them back, say thank you. And you know, I don't like that either. I'm sorry you had to smell it. We're going to try to fix it, okay? And what you'll find is you can take that negative and make it a positive real fast, because what they learned about us was, and I told the fire guys, the fire protection district, anytime you like, you want to visit the plant at midnight, give me a call. And they will never do that, Bob. But seriously, right? Open kimono is what the way to do that. We had the opportunity to consolidate with another plant. So if our goal is to make biodiesel and make money, what if we didn't have duplicate overhead? We could join with the Denton plant, move most of our productive equipment down there, move Bob down there, and make that plant go, and give up the real estate and the rent, and sell the gallons that we would have made it worth it in Denton. And that's what we did. Threats? Yeah. We can't control it. Raw materials go up, it's a big one. And it happened faster, I think, than most of us thought it would. Most of us in the industry and in the home community, you know, we all knew that feedstock was going to be a feedstock grab over the next few years, and man, it just went bam. You know, Katrina happened, and it's happened faster than we thought, and the huge proliferation of biodiesel plants. Like that, lots of competitors more in the way. Not so true anymore. Not as many competitors, and probably fewer on the way. How many of you know of a plant that was being built and is now kind of in this idle or on hold mode? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a bunch. And you know, I'm not really sure that's sad. I think what happened is too many people got in, right? So, all well-intended, but be careful if you want to start a plant right now. Really do your homework, because we're spending another couple of weeks talking to some people who hit their heads hard. Permitting requirements are getting tougher, and that tougher is maybe a bad choice of words there. Sorry? Yeah. Not necessarily that either, so that would be tougher. It's more that, an example of, I'll use the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, the air quality division, if I've used the right words, it's like that. They didn't really understand what we did, okay? They didn't know. So, as the town of Berthoud didn't really know, what, you know, how much methanol are you talking about? Is it a closed system? Is it going to the air? Are you bringing, you know, are your tanks, do you have venting on your tanks that's feeding back from the system, or are you letting it go to the atmosphere when you bring in your 6,500 gallons, right? So, because the guy who started the plant had not done it and told him what he was doing, had he known, they didn't really know. They'd become a lot more sophisticated. There was an article in the paper about February or March of one of the producers in Denver who got themselves, the whistle blown on them a little bit through a kind of awkward situation, and it turned out that they didn't have their air permit, okay? And it was in the paper, and it said, biodiesel plant, unpermitted for air emissions, or something a little worse than that. Anybody remembers the word better? It was something like that. It wasn't good. But the fact is that they didn't get shut down. They're working together with the state on it now, and they're fixing that problem, okay? So it's more than it's getting stricter. The requirements haven't changed as much. It's that there's a better understanding in the regulatory community about
getting more honest.
Yeah, and we're getting more honest. More of us are doing, you know, what Graves doing, you guys are doing, going through the front door, and educating each other. Matt Steinman, who unfortunately didn't make it here this year, but he's doing a really good thing in Pennsylvania right now for home brewers, where they are working on best practices with the state. And you can follow some of that on the info platform with Matt, who goes by Farmer on that forum. Fabulous dude. He's doing some good stuff with methanol recovery, by the way, as well. And issue number 3? Nice. Biodiesel spider. So anyway, that's, you know, going and you know, great, you hit your head against all this stuff, but you did a service for everybody in this room, okay? By learning it, being able to pass it on, and it's kind of, you know, on one side you go, God, why did you do that? Because now I lose sleep at night. Well, the fact is that you've helped us, because we all better understand and there's fewer surprises, and hopefully less people will get hurt ultimately. Another threat, and this one's still out there, perceived quality issues with biodiesel producers. And I don't mean home brewers. So one of the interesting memes that's been out in the biodiesel world for the last couple of years is that because I think the NBD did help promulgate this meme was that home brewers are hurting the industry because they make bad fuel. You know, it's been out there, it's crap, okay? What those of us in the industry, the commercial side of the industry know is, we are making worse fuel most of the time. Okay, I don't really mean that, not most of the time, but when you hear of fuel issues, quality issues, it wasn't yours because you didn't sell it.
You don't want your market to be too.
Right, so
if you sell to 5,000 people.
Well, that's the thing. So if you had fuel quality issues, you or your friend's trucks or cars had problems. When I have fuel quality issues, it's in the paper, okay? And so most of what people have heard about fuel quality issues had nothing to do with home brewers. It was, you know, Minnesota, when Minnesota did the B2 mandate, you know, we learned the hard way a bit in distribution and about sterols and that sort of thing. I have, in the last 6 or 8 weeks, one of the benefits of moving to Texas is I've gotten included in the National Biodiesel Energy Lab, NBDL, activity that's happening out of Detroit. It's in conjunction with a nonprofit called Next Energy. They got something like $300 million in funding from Chrysler and all these guys. So I'm sitting in on meetings now that you'd be very jealous of. And they're sort of long and boring. You're talking about fuel injection pumps and standards. You know, frankly, a big threat that isn't on here but should be is this generation biodiesel transesterified fats and oils is commercially probably going away in a few years. Okay? Because so it's not the Franken-fuel of green diesel or the Conoco-Tyson thing, because the fuel because it's going to because it's going to be replaced with fuel made other ways. Okay, sun fuel. What somebody out here knows this?
Is that a
Okay.
synthetic?
Yeah, and so
Diesel.
yeah, syn diesel. So the fact is, here's the good news. Okay, what you guys are doing, that ain't going away, right? So don't worry about it. But what commercial, it's a threat to us. Okay. There's been a thread on the TDI Club by a guy named Drive-By-Wire, who is in the industry, Volkswagen. Huh?
Yeah.
Yep, and he's talking about the 08, and Volkswagen's 08 will not allow any biodiesel content. Zip. Go read it. TDI Club. It's been on the forum for about the last week and a half, going back and forth. And I'll have to say, and sitting in on these meetings with MDEL folks, where Delphi and Bosch, fuel injection equipment manufacturers, on them, he's one of the main thrusts of the meetings that I've been in on is developing the B6 to B20 standard, okay, the ASTM standard that will cover those blends. It probably will get released by the end of the year. But those guys are not the fuel injection pump people, among others, are dragging their feet. Fortunately, ASTM has methodology that you can only drag your feet if you have peer-reviewed reasons why. You have to say why if you don't want it. Okay, what the issue is with the fuel. Is it viscosity? I mean, specifically, technically, what is the issue? And then you must show peer-reviewed evidence to support your theory. And if you don't have that, then it'll go to ballot, and your comments and your votes will be taken out, basically, sort of how that works. But I guess the point of it is that for commercial producers, particularly people who are looking at doing something on the larger side of things, where you are going to have to be selling fuel to all kinds of equipment, not just the tie-dye patchouli wearing Mercedes-Benz drivers. It's a real threat. Different types of biodiesel. In other words, the syn fuel, this sort of thing. Other threats. This is always one. Safety, just material handling. It's it was talked about pretty well in the grease collection one, right? Things do happen, and so when you're having tankers of methanol, 6,500 gallon tankers coming to your property every few times a month, yeah. So it's just things we need to plan for. So I think that's it. We should probably do lunch, but thank you.